What happens when a simple question about family turns into one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history? Today we're breaking down the moment Kelly Osbourne walked off The View after an intense confrontation with Joy Behar that nobody saw coming. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on, because this one is going to divide opinions. Let's get into it. So Kelly Osbourne is on The View promoting her new podcast about mental health and addiction recovery, topics she's been incredibly open about throughout her career. The conversation starts off pleasant enough, with Whoopi welcoming her and the panel asking about her journey. Kelly is in good spirits, talking about how she's learned to set boundaries and prioritize her well-being. Everything seems fine, the audience is engaged, and Kelly is being vulnerable in a way that clearly resonates with people. Then Joy Behar jumps in. Now, Joy has never been one to shy away from controversial questions, and today is no different. She says, "Kelly, I want to ask you something. You've been very public about your struggles, and I commend you for that. But your father, Ozzy, he's built an entire career on the rock and roll lifestyle. Do you ever feel like there's a contradiction there? Like, he glorified the very things you're now saying destroyed parts of your life?" You can see Kelly's expression shift immediately. There's this moment where she's clearly processing the question, trying to figure out if Joy is being genuine or if this is a setup. She takes a breath and responds, "I think that's a really reductive way of looking at my father's career and my experience. My dad never glorified addiction. He suffered from it. There's a difference between being an entertainer and being someone who's struggling with a disease." Joy doesn't back down. She says, "But Kelly, come on. The reality show, the public persona, it all made addiction look like part of the rock star package. Kids watching that show saw your family laughing about things that are genuinely destructive. Don't you think there's some responsibility there?" Now Kelly sits up straighter. You can tell she's getting defensive, but she's trying to keep it together. She says, "First of all, our show also showed the consequences. It showed my mom worried sick. It showed interventions. It showed real pain. We didn't edit out the hard parts. And second, my father's addiction is his story to tell, not yours to judge." Joy responds, "I'm not judging. I'm asking a legitimate question. You're here promoting mental health awareness, but your family made millions off of essentially documenting dysfunction. That's just a fact." Kelly's voice gets firmer. She says, "It's not a fact, it's your interpretation. And honestly, it's a pretty insulting one. My family didn't make money off dysfunction. We made money off being honest about our lives. There's a huge difference, and if you can't see that, maybe you shouldn't be asking the questions." The other hosts start to look uncomfortable. Whoopi tries to interject, saying, "I think what Joy is trying to get at, and you both can correct me if I'm wrong, but you see this happen where families in the public eye, their struggles become entertainment, and there's always going to be people who question where the line is." But Kelly cuts her off. She says, "No, I know exactly what Joy is getting at. She's getting at the same thing people have been getting at my entire life, that my family is a circus, that we're not legitimate, that our pain is somehow less real because we allowed cameras to document it, and I'm so tired of defending my family to people who don't know us." Joy jumps back in. She says, "Kelly, I've interviewed your father multiple times. I've interviewed your mother. I'm not saying I don't know your family. I'm saying that there's a valid conversation to be had about the ethics of reality television and what it does to the people in it and the people watching it." Kelly fires back, "Then have that conversation, but don't use my family as your punching bag to make some point about reality TV. There are 1,000 shows you could talk about. But you always come back to us. Why is that? Why is it always the Osbournes who have to answer for an entire industry?" The audience is dead silent now. You can feel the tension in the studio. Sarah Haynes tries to lighten things up by saying, "I think we're all passionate about this topic because it matters. And Kelly, your honesty is exactly why these conversations are important." But Kelly isn't having it. She says, I didn't come here to be put on trial for my family's decisions. I came here to talk about helping people who are struggling. But instead, I'm sitting here defending my father's entire career to someone who's decided we're the problem with society. Joy says, That's not what I said. You're putting words in my mouth. Kelly responds, No, I'm reading between the lines, and I've been doing it my whole life. I know when someone is pretending to ask a question but really just wants to make a statement. Joy's tone shifts. She says, Kelly, I think you're being overly sensitive here. This is a talk show. We ask tough questions. If you can't handle that, maybe you're not ready to have these conversations publicly. And that's when things really escalate. Kelly says, Overly sensitive? You just spent 5 minutes implying that my family exploited our trauma for money, and I'm overly sensitive for pushing back? Joy says, I didn't imply anything. I asked a direct question about the impact of reality television on public perception of addiction and mental health. Kelly leans forward. She says, No, you asked me if I thought my father was a bad influence. You can dress it up however you want, but that's what you were asking. And the answer is no. My father is a human being who's struggled with addiction his entire life. He's also the most loving, supportive parent I could have asked for. And I'm not going to sit here and let you twist that into something ugly. Whoopi tries again to mediate. She says, I think we're all getting a little heated here, and maybe we need to take a breath and remember we're on the same side. We all want to reduce stigma around mental health and addiction. But Kelly's had enough. She says, Are we on the same side? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like I'm being ambushed. I thought I was coming here to have a real conversation. Instead, I'm defending my family's entire existence. Joy says, No one's attacking your family's existence, Kelly. But if you're going to be in the public eye talking about these issues, you have to expect that people are going to have questions about your perspective and where it comes from. Kelly stands up, not literally walking off yet, but you can tell she's close. She says, I can handle questions. What I can't handle is disrespect, disguised as journalism. There's a way to ask hard questions without being condescending, and you clearly haven't figured that out yet. The studio is incredibly tense now. The other hosts are exchanging glances, clearly unsure how to proceed. Joy, to her credit, doesn't back down. She says, I haven't been condescending. I've been direct. And if you can't tell the difference, that's on you, not me. Kelly looks at her for a long moment. Then she says, You know what, Joy? I've watched you do this to other guests. You bait them, you twist their words, and then you act shocked when they get upset. But I'm not going to give you that satisfaction. I'm not going to be the unhinged celebrity who lost it on The View. So let me be very clear. I'm not upset. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that you would use your platform to tear down someone who's trying to help people. And I'm disappointed in myself for thinking this would be different. Joy says, I'm not tearing you down, Kelly. I'm having a conversation. Kelly responds, No, you're having a monologue disguised as a conversation. There's a difference, and I think we're done here. Whoopi immediately tries to salvage the situation. She says, Okay, hold on. Nobody's done here. Kelly, please sit down. Let's take a breath and reset this conversation, because I think there's been a misunderstanding. Kelly remains standing. She says, There's no misunderstanding, Whoopi. I understood perfectly. Joy thinks my family is part of the problem, and she wants me to admit it on national television. But I won't do that because it's not true. Joy throws her hands up. She says, This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so defensive that you can't even engage with the actual question. I never said your family was the problem. I said there are questions about how reality television impacts the way we view serious issues. That's not controversial. That's media literacy. Kelly points at Joy. She says, Don't do that. Don't act like I'm too stupid to understand your point. I understand it perfectly. You think because my family put our lives on television, We gave up the right to be treated with basic respect. You think it's open season to psychoanalyze us and question our motives. But here's what you don't understand. We're still people. We still have feelings. And we still deserve to tell our own stories without someone like you rewriting them to fit your narrative. Joy's face hardens. She says, "Someone like me? What does that mean?" Kelly says, "It means someone who's made a career out of being provocative without being thoughtful. Someone who confuses cruelty with honesty. Someone who thinks that because they have a microphone, they have the right to say whatever they want without consequences." The audience gasps. You can hear a few people murmuring. Sonny Hostin jumps in, saying, "Kelly, I think that's a little unfair." Joy has been doing this for decades, and while her style might be direct, she's never cruel. She's asking questions that a lot of people have. Kelly turns to Sonny. She says, "Then let those people ask the questions. Why does Joy get to speak for everyone? And why is it that when someone pushes back against her, suddenly they're the one being unfair? I'm not the one who started this. I came here in good faith. I answered questions about my podcast, about my recovery, about my hopes for reducing stigma, and then Joy decided to turn it into a referendum on my entire family." Joy says, "That is not what happened, and you know it. You're being dramatic because you don't like being challenged." Kelly laughs, but there's no humor in it. She says, "Challenged? Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm sitting, this feels a lot more like an attack. And you know what the saddest part is? I actually used to respect you. I used to think you were brave for saying things other people wouldn't say. But now I realize you're not brave. You're just mean. There's a difference." Joy stands up now too. She says, "I am not mean. And I'm not going to sit here and be insulted by someone who can't handle a difficult conversation. You came on a talk show, Kelly. This is what we do. We talk, we debate, we challenge each other. If you wanted a puff piece interview, you should have gone on a morning show." Kelly says, "I can handle difficult conversations. What I can't handle is being disrespected in the name of entertainment. You're not trying to have a conversation, Joy. You're trying to get a viral moment. You're trying to make me cry or yell or storm off so you can boost your ratings. Well, congratulations, because I am about to give you exactly what you want." Whoopi stands up and says, "No, nobody's storming off. We're all going to sit down, take a commercial break, and come back to this with cooler heads. This is not how we do things on this show." But Kelly shakes her head. She says, "I appreciate that, Whoopi. I really do. But I can't sit here for another second pretending this is normal." Joy crossed a line, and instead of acknowledging it, everyone's trying to convince me that I'm overreacting. But I know what I heard. I know what she meant. And I'm not going to gaslight myself to make everyone else comfortable. Joy says, "Oh, please. Now I'm gaslighting you? You're really pulling out all the therapy buzzwords, aren't you? This is what happens when people spend too much time in their own heads. They start seeing attacks everywhere." Kelly's eyes widen. She says, "Wow, did you really just mock me for being in therapy? Did you really just use my mental health journey as an insult? And you wonder why I'm upset?" Joy backpedals slightly. She says, "That's not what I meant. I'm saying that you're interpreting this conversation through a very specific lens, and that lens is making you see things that aren't there." Kelly says, "No, Joy, I'm seeing things that are absolutely there. You've been condescending to me from the moment you opened your mouth. Every question was loaded. Every comment was designed to put me on the defensive, and when I finally pushed back, you accused me of being too sensitive. That's textbook manipulation, and I'm not falling for it." Alyssa Farah Griffin tries to step in. She says, "Kelly, I think there's been a breakdown in communication here. Maybe we can all acknowledge that emotions are high and try to find common ground." Kelly turns to her. She says, "I appreciate that you're trying to help, but there's no common ground when one person refuses to admit they did anything wrong. Joy hasn't apologized. She hasn't even acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, her approach was hurtful. Instead, she's doubling down and making me out to be the problem. Joy says, because you are the problem right now. You're the one who's escalating this. You're the one who's making accusations. All I did was ask a question about reality television and its impact on society. That's literally my job. Kelly says, your job is also to listen. Your job is to create a space where guests feel safe to share their stories. But you didn't do that. You created a space where I feel attacked and judged. And now you're acting like that's somehow my fault. Joy sits back down and crosses her arms. She says, I'm not doing this anymore. If you want to leave, leave. If you want to stay and have an actual conversation, then sit down and let's talk like adults. But I'm not going to keep going in circles with you. Kelly stares at her. She says, you really don't get it, do you? You really think you did nothing wrong? That's the most disturbing part of all of this. You have no self-awareness about how you treat people. Joy says, I treat people with honesty. If that bothers you, that's your issue, not mine. Kelly picks up her phone from the table. She says, you know what, Joy? You're right about one thing. This is my issue. My issue is that I keep putting myself in situations where people think they can say whatever they want to me because I'm a public figure. My issue is that I keep hoping for better and getting disappointed. But that ends today. I'm not going to sit here and be your punching bag. Whoopi says, Kelly, please, let's just take 5 minutes. Let's reset. But Kelly is already removing her microphone. She says, I'm sorry, Whoopi. I really am. I have so much respect for you and for this show, but I can't do this. I can't sit here and pretend this is okay. Joy owes me an apology, and until she's willing to give me one, I don't have anything else to say. Joy says, I'm not apologizing for doing my job. Kelly looks at her one more time. She says, then I guess we're done here. Sarah Haynes makes one last attempt to keep Kelly at the table. She says, Kelly, I hear you. I hear that you feel disrespected, and that's valid, but walking away doesn't solve anything. Stay and tell us what you need from this conversation to move forward. Kelly pauses, her hand still on the microphone pack at her waist. She says, what I need is for Joy to acknowledge that her line of questioning was designed to provoke me, not to enlighten anyone. What I need is for someone at this table to admit that maybe, just maybe, there's a difference between asking tough questions and asking cruel ones. But I don't think that's going to happen, so why would I stay? Joy leans back in her chair and says, you want me to admit I was cruel? Fine. Let me be crystal clear. I was not cruel. I asked you about the ethical implications of turning your family's struggles into entertainment. That's a valid question that dozens of scholars and critics have raised about reality television. If you can't separate your personal feelings from an intellectual discussion, that's not my problem. Kelly's jaw tightens. She says, there it is again. You're making this about my inability to handle criticism when it's actually about your inability to show empathy. You can ask tough questions without stripping someone of their dignity. Plenty of interviewers do it every single day. But you don't want to do that because it's not as interesting. You want conflict. You want drama. And you're willing to hurt people to get it. Joy says, I'm willing to ask uncomfortable questions. Yes, that's what journalism is. That's what meaningful dialogue looks like. If you want everyone to just pat you on the back and tell you how brave you are, write a book and go on a book tour where everyone's contractually obligated to be nice to you. The audience is completely silent now, and you can see some people looking genuinely uncomfortable. Whoopi puts her head in her hands for a moment before saying, this has gotten way out of hand. Both of you are making valid points, but we've lost the thread of what we're supposed to be talking about here. Kelly says, we lost the thread the moment Joy decided to make this about my family instead of about mental health advocacy. That was her choice, not mine. I tried to steer it back multiple times, but she kept pushing. Sonny Hostin says, Kelly, do you think maybe you're being a little defensive because the question hit close to home? Sometimes when we're challenged about things we love, our family for instance, we can react more strongly than we would otherwise. Kelly turns to Sunny with a look of disbelief. She says, "Are you seriously psychoanalyzing me right now?" I'm not being defensive because the question hit close to home. I'm being defensive because I'm being attacked on national television and everyone's acting like I'm the crazy one for not just sitting here and taking it. Alyssa says, "I don't think anyone thinks you're crazy, Kelly. I think we're all just trying to figure out how this conversation went sideways so quickly." Kelly says, "It went sideways because Joy asked a loaded question and then refused to acknowledge that it was loaded. It went sideways because when I pushed back, I was told I was too sensitive. It went sideways because apparently on this show, the guest is always wrong and the hosts are always right." Joy says, "That is absolutely not true. And you know it. We've had plenty of guests push back on us, and we've had productive conversations. The difference is those guests didn't immediately jump to accusations and personal attacks." Kelly says, "I didn't jump to anything. I responded to what you said. And if you think pointing out that you were being condescending is a personal attack, then maybe you need to take a look at how you communicate with people." Joy stands up again. She says, "You know what? I'm done. I tried to have a conversation. I tried to engage with you on a meaningful level. But you're so wrapped up in being a victim that you can't see past your own nose. So go ahead and leave. Storm off. Give everyone something to talk about. That's clearly what you want anyway." Kelly's face goes red. She says, "What I want? What I want is to not be here right now. What I want is to have never agreed to come on this show. What I want is for you to understand that words have consequences and that you can't just say whatever you want to people and expect them to smile and nod. But clearly, that's too much to ask." Whoopi stands up and says, "Okay, that's it. We're going to commercial. And when we come back, we're moving on to a different topic. Kelly, if you want to stay for the rest of the show, you're welcome to. If you need to go, we understand. But this particular conversation is over." Kelly looks at Whoopi and says, "I appreciate you trying to keep the peace, Whoopi. I really do. But I can't stay. I can't sit here for another segment pretending everything's fine when it's not. Joy disrespected me, and instead of addressing that, everyone's trying to smooth it over and move on. But I'm not going to be part of that." Joy says, "Then go. Seriously. No one's stopping you." Kelly removes her microphone completely now and sets it on the table. She says, "You're right. No one's stopping me, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. But before I go, I want to say something to anyone watching who's struggling with addiction or mental health issues. Don't let anyone make you feel like your story doesn't matter. Don't let anyone use your pain as a talking point. And don't let anyone tell you that setting boundaries makes you difficult. You deserve respect. You deserve compassion. And you deserve better than what I got today." She turns to the other hosts. She says, "Sunny, Sarah, Alyssa, thank you for trying. Whoopi, thank you for everything you've done over the years. I'm sorry this is how today went." Then she looks at Joy one more time. She says, "And Joy, I genuinely hope you take some time to think about how you make people feel. Because being right isn't everything. Being kind matters too." Joy says, "I'll think about it right after you think about why you're so quick to play the victim card." That's the final straw. Kelly doesn't say another word. She turns and walks off the set, and you can hear her heels clicking on the floor as she exits. The camera stays on the remaining hosts, who all look various degrees of shocked and uncomfortable. Whoopi is the first to speak. She says, "Well, that happened. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the rest of today's show." As the show cuts to commercial, you can see Joy and Whoopi having what looks like an intense conversation. The other hosts are sitting in silence, clearly processing what just happened. So, what just happened here? This wasn't just a celebrity losing it. This was a complete breakdown in communication between two very different styles. Joy Behar built her career on being direct and provocative, asking uncomfortable questions without sugarcoating anything. Kelly Osbourne came on to discuss mental health and walked into what felt like an ambush. Joy's question about reality television and the Osbourne family was actually legitimate. Plenty of critics have debated whether reality shows glamorize dysfunction, but her delivery was aggressive, and she never gave Kelly any sense that she was asking from a place of genuine curiosity. Kelly, already sensitive about how her family gets portrayed in the media, heard every question as an attack. They both ended up talking past each other. Kelly wanted acknowledgement that Joy's tone was hurtful. Joy wanted Kelly to engage with the actual question. Neither would budge, so the whole thing fell apart. The frustrating part is, this could have been a real conversation about the ethics of reality television, but instead, it became a fight about respect and boundaries. The other hosts tried to play peacemaker, but once both sides dug in, there was no coming back. Kelly made the choice that her dignity mattered more than staying, and honestly, you can respect that decision. She set a boundary and stuck to it, but she also walked away from a conversation that might have gone somewhere productive if either side had been willing to meet in the middle. So here's the question. Was Joy out of line, or was Kelly overreacting? Should hosts be able to ask whatever they want, or do they have a responsibility to make guests feel safe? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit that subscribe button. Would you have walked off like Kelly, or stayed to finish it out?